Good morning, everybody, and thank you very much for getting up so early to join us. My name is Lauren Flaherty. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer for CA Technologies, and it's really a delight for us to have you join us this morning. This is something that we wanted to do, an opportunity to meet you, an opportunity to have you meet one another. So we set up this morning's breakfast with Kay Koplovitz, who is a member of our board, to give you a perspective, on what's happening today, and also this notion of the capacity to reinvent, which is about having agility, which is also about having that personally as well as professionally and in technology. So I think that will be really interesting. And then we're going to have a panel that includes one of our customers, Vicki Schumacher from Scottrade, and also another one of our board members, Laura Unger. And before we get into it, I do want to do a read here on Kay, which I'm sure will not love, but I wanted to give you a sense of who she is before she shares some of her comments with us, because it's really quite impressive. This is a woman with a career to admire. Kay is an industry pioneer and a business transformer, and her accomplishments are literally so distinguished that I have to walk you through these. Kay led USA Networks, which she founded, to the top spot in cable primetime ratings. She redefined sports television along with the role of women in broadcasting. Quite an accomplishment. In addition to her role as part of the board of directors of CA Technologies, she also serves on the board of Time Inc., and she also serves on the board of a host of not-for-profits who have also a particular bent about entrepreneurialism. I've had an opportunity to see what Kay does with Springboard and the work and how important it is to entrepreneurship for all people, and women, as well, in terms of creating that kind of endeavor that supports entrepreneurs, women entrepreneurs in particular. In 1998, President Clinton appointed her to chair the Bipartisan National Women's Business Council, a platform that she used to advance entrepreneurship by women. She is the author of Bold Women, Big Ideas, a title I wish I had come up with, and has been honored with 4 honorary doctorates, which recognize her role as one of the foremost women in business today. It is with great pleasure that I bring to the stage Kay Koplovitz to join us. Thank you, my dear. Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with you this morning, and glad to be a member of the CA Technologies team. I want to talk a little bit about exponential thinking, but to do that, I want to take you back in time. So I want you to close your eyes for a moment and forget every cable network you ever saw, every email you ever sent, every text message you ever received or sent, and imagine a barren landscape with 3 television networks. And that's all. And that's where I started. And it was a serendipitous moment, actually, that got me going. I was a student at the University of Wisconsin. I had been working my way through school, and between my junior and senior year, I decided to take a little trip to Europe to see something outside of Wisconsin, where I lived and went to school. And I happened to be in London, and I saw a poster there about a lecture being given on satellites. Now, that's sexy, isn't it? You can open your eyes now. It is sexy. Satellites? How many 20-year-old women would have jumped at the chance? But I did, because when I was growing up, I was intrigued by Sputnik and by, President Kennedy, who had challenged us to put a man on the moon without any knowledge of how we were going to get there. And I've always loved the art of possibility. And I thought, okay, go and listen to this lecture on satellites. And it was about geosynchronous orbiting satellites. Isn't that really a sexy title? I thought, hey, this is cool. This person giving this lecture was so empowering to me. He opened my mind to the possibility of satellites. Now, I have to tell people in the room, some of you will remember, that was during the Cold War. We still had the Berlin Wall, which doesn't exist anymore. There was the Great Wall of China to keep people out and not let us in. And we didn't know what was behind these walls. And I thought, wow, these satellites, 3 satellites circling the Earth, could get anywhere on Earth and with a message. And I thought, wow, this is really powerful. What if we had television that we could really see and talk to people behind these walls? Wouldn't this be fantastic? This was 1966. I was 4 at the time. And so anyway, I brought this idea back to me, and I went to graduate school and wrote a master's thesis on satellites and its impact on communications and what it could really do to change our lives. And it was such an empowering idea that I pursued it relentlessly for the next. I wrote a master's thesis in '68. I pursued it, worked in the business, worked in the satellite business, worked in the cable business, which was nothing actually in those days except an antenna system in rural America, and really to bring this idea alive. And I'll tell you the very, very moment it was. It was a very specific date. It was September 30th, 1975. And many people in the room won't know what happened on that day, but some will. It was the Thriller from Manila. It was the greatest boxing match of all time. And we brought that boxing match live from Manila to Vero Beach, Florida, and demonstrated for Congress and senators the viability of satellites for commercial purposes to really light up the cable industry. And we succeeded. And wasn't that a great fight for those of you who remember? That was the moment that launched my career. And I tell you this because it was really grabbing the idea of something that could be so far, maybe in people's minds, so far in the future, but grabbing onto it and making it come alive. And so one of the great things of that period was that we were able to establish the business proposition for cable networks. We had 2 revenue streams, advertising and licensing, reversing the television model in which the television networks actually paid the TV stations to carry their signal. The cable systems paid us to receive our and that was when I really went out and launched really all Major League sports on cable at that time. So it was an interesting time to really lift an industry. And now fast forward to today. I mean, totally different landscape. No barriers to entry. People are going at the speed of light. Transformational businesses are happening all around us, and we have to go faster, faster, faster every single day. And when I was leaving USA at the end of the 90s, and President Clinton appointed me to be chair of the National Women's Business Council, I really wanted to do something for women that would really change the prospect for them. I knew that women were not getting the funding they needed for their businesses. And so we were fortunate to get some friends together in Silicon Valley, mount an initiative to find women entrepreneurs that were in technology and life sciences, and bring them to a forum. We brought them together in January 2000. Trying to get the applications in, we thought to ourselves, oh, please, please, let there be at least 100 applications so we can maybe have 10 companies to present in technology and life sciences. We got 350. And that's when I knew there was a big market out here for women that were transforming businesses. So in 2000, we launched with 26 of those companies. The amazing thing, if you lived in Silicon Valley in those days, and even today, if you go to a forum where companies are presenting, they never saw a woman present, or maybe on a rarity one. They showed up, the venture capitalists, the people that were interested in it. They showed up and they saw every presenter was a woman. And I thought, today's showtime. We're going to see what happens. Do you know what? That was a fabulous moment. But you know what was really fabulous about it? 22 of those companies got funded. 2 women merged their companies. 1 woman sold her company, and 1 wasn't funded. So we've never stopped. And so in the past 15 years, we've done a lot of work with women entrepreneurs who are really making a difference in technology, growing scalable businesses. And to date, we've brought over 550 of these companies to market. What's really amazing about them is that 83% of them get funded. 80% of them are in business today over 15 years. They collectively have raised over $6.6 billion to fuel their businesses with the help of the Springboard Enterprises, which is an accelerator for them. and it's a large network, and CA is a great supporter of that network. And a third of them have had positive liquidity events, which is twice the national average of all companies funded by venture. It's only 17% for all companies and 35% for Springboard companies. Now, isn't that amazing? This is what women are doing today. So very quickly, I just want to share some I thought this was very interesting. We wanted to find out why our women were performing at such a high level. We know we put a lot of human capital into our companies that we bring through our program. But Korn Ferry just recently this summer did a research study comparing the CEOs in Springboard, which are women CEOs and founders, 183 of them, with 306 people, men and women, in C-suites. And what we thought was very interesting what we found, because we found out why the whole selection process, why these women are so successful. And here it is. Hang on to your hats, because you'll get some good news after this slide. What we found was that women entrepreneurs in the Springboard family are extremely tolerant of ambiguity. They can live with ambiguity. Their curiosity quotients are very high, and you see on this slide the comparison with men and women in the C-suites from the Korn Ferry data bank, and pretty close together on emotional intelligence, okay? So what does this mean? Well, as women, we've got to raise our game, and we can. And what does that mean? We've got to seek out and go as far as our risk appetites. Individually, we have different risk appetites. But we've got to push ourselves and take control of assignments, of tasks that we aren't completely 100% clear that we can succeed at, but that we are willing to go out and try. We've got to force ourselves to do more of that and to really embrace it in today's world. What does it mean, though, if you have a tolerance for ambiguity and curiosity? It's all about learning agility. And people who have learning agility get promoted faster, advance closer to the top, are recognized as leaders, are rated more competent by their peers, achieve greater success for promotion, and, oh, by the way, earn more money. So these are the attributes I wanted to share with you, that inside yourself, find out where is your tolerance for ambiguity. How far out can you go into the unknown? Because it's really important that we each push ourselves to achieve our greatest inner knowledge. So, we're living in the world where by 2020 there will be 50 billion devices connected. All of you are pretty familiar with the exponential growth of devices in our market. I think this warrior is actually calling in her vendor, Kate Spade, I am also on that board, for our African original designs. That's what I think she's doing. But all I wanted to say to you is I wanted to encourage you to think exponentially. And just one last comment about what exponential thinking means. If I asked you to imagine 30 steps, how far would I go? Maybe 30 yards if I took big steps, something like that. You get the idea of how far that was, right? If I asked you to take 30 exponential steps, how far do you think we would go? I'm going to tell you. 1 billion yards, 26 times around the circumference of the Earth. And that's the difference between linear and exponential thinking. And that's what we need to move forward in today's market. We're moving at exponential speed. So the panel's going to join us up here on the stage now. Take you with you.
Good morning. So we never thought when we invited people to a breakfast at 7:15 a.m. in Las Vegas that 100 people would actually show. But thank you very much. It's wonderful to see all of you. My name is Megan Gregorczyk. I work in human resources, specifically in the areas of diversity and inclusion at CA Technologies. And we thought we'd just sit down with these amazing women to have a little chat about what's going on in the industry, what we see happening, and what power we hold to really transform the market. So I wanted to do a quick overview of Lauren, She was so great about introducing Kay that she forgot to mention that she is a 3-time CMO. She's worked in the industry for over 20 years, and she is absolutely one of the best in the business. This entire event is thanks to her, so if you're having a great time, please stop her and thank her later. We're also joined by Vicki Schumacher. She's the VP of Process and Governance and Reporting with Scottrade. She's been there for over 8 years and has advanced through the company with kind of amazing speed. She's moved from project manager to program manager to leader of PMOs and is now the VP of Process Governance. She lives in St. Louis, Missouri with her daughter and husband. So thank you very much, Vicki, for joining us. And certainly not last but not least, our other board member joining us today is Miss Laura Unger. She was a commissioner of the SEC from 1997 to 2002 and served as acting chairperson of the SEC from February to August of 2001. She also served as counsel to the U.S. Senate Committee on Banking, Housing, and Urban Affairs. And prior to working on Capitol Hill, she was an attorney with the Enforcement Division of the SEC.
Makes me sound so scary.
Not bad. Not bad. So if we think about this, of course. So if we think about this topic of learning agility and exponential thinking that Kay was speaking about, and how we transform those themes into this idea of what we see going on in the marketplace, especially IT, with women, right? It's been a huge year if you think about all of the disclosures that have happened around diversity metrics, around this idea that female leadership is on the rise. How do we apply these ideas of exponential thinking and learning agility to what we see happening, and how can we impact it even further?
Well, I think we should, in our management and the people we work with, the teams we work with, I think it's really important for people to reach out of their comfort zone to grow. Because if you're not, I will say, if you're in the safe zone and you've been there for a long time, you're not learning new skills and really advancing. So it's, as a part of the team that everybody works on, I think it's really important to step up and take leadership in things that you don't know all the answers to. Yeah. That's the only way you really grow. And I think that was really my message today, is like reach as far. I have a high tolerance for risk. I know that. I'm a risk taker, okay? I'm a person that'll go out and, lay it all on the line. And that's really the message. Each of us needs to take on new assignments that we don't know all the answers to. That's how you really push yourself to grow.
It's a really important point. I know sometimes these things sound like cliches, but for women in particular, I would say you can't let fear be your counsel. And it's one of the things that I would tell you that in my own journey along the way, and I've worked in tech my entire career, there were times along the way where I was just spooked about taking a job. I didn't feel totally prepared, And for all of the most magnificent things that have ever happened on the planet, I'd bet you Pepsi, sorry, favorite expression of mine, that you weren't totally prepared. They sure weren't totally prepared when they said we're going to go to the moon. So I think that's one of the things that when I listen to Kay talk about exponential thinking, before you can even get there, you got to unleash that notion of you can't be afraid. It isn't always going to go perfect, but you do have to go for it as prepared as you can be. And sometimes, I know when I interview women and I'll say to them, hey, what about this opportunity? They'll say, I don't know if I could do that. Well, why not? What's the worst that could happen? Go for it. So I think that's a theme in exponential thinking that says you got to cut it loose and don't let fear be your counsel.
And I think that might be a little bit of a cultural issue in terms of the gender, because I will never forget, and I'm with you all, I've never taken a job that I've been ready for, and if that's what makes you competent, I'm extremely competent and qualified. But I'll never forget I worked, as you heard, at the commission for a long time, and a good friend of mine was the head of enforcement, and after 15 years in the government, he was leaving. And he said, Laura, everyone's going to find out I don't know anything. I don't know, they're going to have these great expectations about what I know and what I can do. And he was terrified, clearly. So anytime I am taking on a new task, which is pretty sequential, or pretty much always, I think of those words, and I think it's not just us who has that feeling, it's men. But men will walk the walk and talk the talk, and we're just sometimes a little reticent to do that. And you shouldn't be, because you're in good company, and everybody is doing that to a certain extent. So do it. Just do it, you know?
Yeah, I definitely was not prepared for my positions, but, you know, it was the confidence and the leadership. And one of the things that I do is I go talk to the team members. It's not about your title or anything like that. It's about what do the other people have to say, and what are they, how do they feel, and really getting that, keeping in with everybody in the company to know, really keep real about things.
Yeah, this idea of risk-taking is something that plays out so often when we talk about career journeys for both men and women. And, you know, one of the most interesting things to hear from people are the things that they did along the way that defined them. You know, we always have these moments in life that just define who we are, and they were all about choices. So I'm interested to hear, you know, what are some of the choices that you've made along the way? What were your best and worst career decisions, and why? And what did they teach you?
Well, I'll take on this question of the defining moment, because I thought about that. And I thought, is the defining moment when I became a commissioner, and I was pretty young at the time, was it, you know, when I took my job on the Hill, not knowing what the Hill was, really? Sort of knew where it was, but I didn't really know how it worked. And I actually think my defining moment came when I was in college. And I went to Berkeley, and it was a big school. It's 25 to 30,000 kids, and you had to fight for everything. You had to fight for your classes, your housing, everything. And I learned then to really go after what you want. And in order to go get what you want, you have to know what it is, and you can't ever let up. And I always got my classes. I found a place to live, but that character trait has stayed with me forever. And I tell my children about that it's you know, where you go to school defines you in funny ways, and that has been a great tenet of career building as well. You know, knowing what you want to do and going after it and getting it. When I left the commission, I knew I wanted to serve on boards because it was an extension of policy to me. It was kind of business policy, and I was doing some work at CNBC, so it seemed like a nice compliment. And people told me I was crazy. It's not that easy. You can't get on boards. You know, I actually got the career advice, so if you want the worst career advice, just go be a lobbyist. You would be really good at that. And I just looked at him incredulous, and I thought, I said, I would rather do almost anything than that. No, thank you. And he said, you know, I know this woman, she did that. She took on a job she hated, and she just made a lot of money saving it for the day that she could leave and go do what she wanted and retire early. And that was the worst career advice I ever got. Yeah. You have to love what you do, because that's what makes you good at it, right? So I did get the boards. I did pursue it, and, you know, you just can't ever let up. So to me, that is the defining moment, and it has led to many other defining times and things, but, you know, that's the character.
I would look at my journey as having so many plot twists, but one that I love because it's almost a caricature. Right out of college, I thought I was going to go to law school. I was interested in going to law school, but I fell in love, and then I wound up working, you know, my way through, so what would I like to do? And I always loved technology. I'd studied a lot about IBM in college. And so I knocked on IBM's door, and smack out of school, got my degree. I showed up. I was suited up and got into their central employment office. And I said, you know, they'd say, sure, we'd love to talk to you, recruit you and all that. And they said, you're going to go over here and take a typing test. And I said, and they said, you're going to take a typing test. And I was like, why? And they said, because the women, well, you'll be a secretary. And I was like, well, wait a tick. I don't know how to type. Why do I have to take a typing test? And so they explained to me why. And I said, where do the guys go? And they said, well, you have a couple of choices. You know, do you know how to do financial accounting? I didn't. And I said, well, where do they go if they don't have, like, those kinds of skills and if they don't know how to type? And they said, they go to the mailroom. It's called the bullpen. And the bullpen is where young guys coming out of school with college degrees or MBAs start their careers. You go in for about 6 to 8 months. You deliver mail to IBM corporate headquarters, and depending upon how you do, you have a shot at a career in IBM. And I said, how many women are in the mailroom? And they said, well, there's never been one. And I said, well, I want to go there. And I said, what do I have to do? They said, you have to get up, drive a truck, 5 o'clock in the morning to New York City and deliver the mail and make sure Sam Palmisano and all the other CEOs along the way get it on time. And I said, who's the fastest that's ever gotten out of the mailroom? What's the clock? And they said, 8 months. And I said, I'm out of here in 6 months. Trust me. And I'll tell you, being in that mailroom, in that bullpen, making me realize it's what you got to do. It's just what you got to do. And somebody said to me, you know, do you have like bad feeling? It was the best. It was being with a group of guys that were just a kick. We had a great time. I had amazing visibility, but it was the first encounter of a journey of, why do I have to take a typing test? And that's where I would just encourage anybody along the way that, and it doesn't mean, you know, for a woman or a guy. I mean, every guy has had a similar kind of experience, but when it hits you in the face, you just got to go, I don't know how to type. You know, and it's not that typing is a bad thing. It's that, you know, choose what you want to do.
Lauren, I have to laugh because my father wanted me to take typing in high school. And I said, no way, I'm not taking. Do you know that we all spend our time typing now?
I know.
Isn't this ironic? And I refuse to take. I said, this is not going to be me. I'm not going to do that. So I'm just like you. I mean, but persistence. I like what Laura was saying about persistence because it is not, you know, it's great to push ourselves and have the idea out there to go for, but it takes a lot of persistence to get there. And you never give up. I mean, I mentioned it took 7 years to get the policy changed in Washington, D.C. for us to be able to launch something in cable. And it took 7 years of really working hard to get there. And so, you know, Malcolm Gladwell says, you know, any great company takes 10,000 hours before it gets to start. I think I put in 20. You know, it was a lot to get, you know, to start a network. And it was basically also because there were only 3 networks at the time, and they never would even look at a woman as a possibility of running a television network back then. And I said, okay, that's fine. I'm going to have my own then. You know, I mean, really, that was
it's
really
be better.
What prompted me to keep persisting on it, because I said, I'm going to start a television network, and it's, you know, and that's, so then I'll be the head of the network. You know, that's a good way to get there. So, you know, it's persistence behind it all that, you know, really does get us there, I think. We can't forget that.
Yeah, I would say, first of all, I would thank women of older generations from where I am, because you guys have helped really pave the way for things. My defining moment was I was sitting in college, again, it was probably 1999 or 2000.
Oh,
and
you're so old.
I was in a professional program, and project management was pretty new in the industry, and they didn't teach it in college. And I was majoring in computer information systems, and I took all the development classes, even COBOL and everything else to go along with it, Java and the whole swish of everything. And I just said, I don't want to be a developer, though, but I love IT. So I was sitting there, and I heard somebody talk about project management, and I was like, that's what I want to do. I loved coordinating everything and helping to pull it all together and understanding the logic behind it all, but I didn't want to sit and program every day. So when I got out of college, I started as a systems analyst, and I told my boss at the time I'm interested in project management, and less than a year later, they opened up a project management department. They're like, Vicki's a great worker. They had confidence and faith in me, and they just said, hey, do you want to be a project manager? I had no idea what I was walking into. And 3 years later, I was managing the first release of the ordering system for UVerse for AT&T. So I was 25, and I look back at that, and I say, what in the world were they thinking giving me that? It was a $20 million project just for my part of it, and I was like, what in the world? But they had confidence in me because of my work ethic and persistence.
Yeah, it's so interesting. So each of your journeys have had this, you know, this underlying theme of tenacity and resolve, right? You saw what you wanted and you went after it. And that's amazing. Yeah. What's so interesting about our journeys, though, is that we never get there alone. We never get there alone. So my question to you is, what have you learned about networking over the years? What would you share with the audience?
People are incredibly generous and kind. In fact, part of that little mailroom experience was the opportunity to hit every senior IBM marketing executive, including the CMO, and say, one day I want your job, you know? And And what, that was my, if I wasn't going to go to law school, marketing was something I'd also studied, and I was really interested in it. And I just found people were incredibly generous and helpful. And at a time where there were not a lot of women in senior positions in IBM, I would say that when I am most indebted was to the men in my career who were extraordinarily generous, kind champions when I was chickening it out on certain things. Those would be the voices behind me saying, go.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. One thing I want to say about networks is, and bringing up men, I think that combined networks and people working in groups, people bring different expertise and different personalities to the group. What we find in research is combined groups of women and men really are the highest performing groups of all. Absolutely. And so it's really diversity of thought, diversity of experiences that really make them enriched. And so it's really important, I think, that we have everybody inclusive in our networks. It will enrich our experience and theirs as well.
Yeah, I look at networking more, there's the social, go have drinks and cocktails. I'm more of an introverted person, which fits IT a lot of the times. But I look at it more of, let's have a deeper conversation and let's talk about what is it that's helping you achieve and what's not. And let's help each other with that. So that's really where I use networking, and it's just to understand how are other companies doing things and what can we learn from each other from that. And it doesn't matter if it's men or women or anything. So I'm on a project management advisory board in St. Louis, and it's nice because it brings people together across all of St. Louis that are working on project management, and we really do learn best practices from each other.
So I have taken sort of a meandering route with respect to my understanding and appreciation of networking. I think it's that Washington has ruined me, because networking in Washington means people want something from you. And so it's kind of like, ugh. And having been in the government for so long, everybody always wanted something from you. So it took me a while of a cooling off period maybe to really kind of appreciate that it's not necessarily people wanting things from each other, but it's more of almost like a friendship, a professional friendship. And I've done it the last couple of years without any agenda, on my part, and hopefully people feel that way about me. And it's, more an exchange of an idea and sort of who do I pick up, who do I call? And then sometimes if opportunities come your way, who could I think of that I could help? And I really love to help people. I love putting people together. Maybe not in that matchmaker way, but slightly less than that. And so to that extent, and so maybe it's a maturity thing. I'm not sure, but I think I maybe have a different perspective on all of that. And so I'm just coming to appreciate how much fun it can be.
Yeah. So each of you talked a little bit about these important networks, and men and women are an important part of networking, right? It can't be one or the other. We can't just network with men, can't just network with women. It's really being balanced in our approach. And so, as we're looking at really growing the diversification of the employee base in IT and getting more balance, how do we bring men into the fold of the conversation?
I have found that you don't have to bring men into the conversation anymore. They want to be in the conversation, which is fantastic.
That is fantastic.
On one of my other boards, we had brought on I'm going to get this right, one new woman director, and so now there were 3 women directors. And the CEO, actually, we had interviewed another person. He said, why don't, we're going to need another director. Why don't we think about, bringing on a 4th woman? That would be great. And we all said, yeah, that would be great, And I think it's coming from the men. The men have wives, they have kids, they see what it's all about, and they actually do want to be part of it. So I am finding that more and more, that I don't need to be the one starting the conversation. And that's a great thing.
It is.
It's always best when it's somebody else's idea, right?
That's right. It's always the best idea when it's theirs, right? Absolutely.
I think there is, though, still a bit of a struggle going on for women accepting the top assignments, the toughest assignments, and so forth within the technology world. And it's not the only world. The financial world is like that. You see it over and over. And I think that men who are here in the room today and those who would like to be here to understand more of what we bring, women bring to the table, I think that it's really the management has to show the leadership to really change. You have to I'll tell you a little story about myself that made me realize it. When I was heading USA, which I did for almost 24 years, Reuben Mark, who was the head of Colgate, and I were having a discussion. It probably was about 1985. So I was like 8 years into USA, more or less at that point in time, and still one of the only women in the business. And I liked playing with the guys. It's really something I grew up with, so I felt very comfortable. But I wanted a very diverse workforce. But he lectured me. He said, "You know what? Just because you're the CEO doesn't mean that people really understand that you really want to have a diverse and equal workforce. You have to make it a part of everybody's job description and their analysis at the end of the year of what they've done in their job. It has to actually be a part of it. You have to make it clear that you want diversity." And at that point in time, it's very funny, I guess when I look back at it, but my sales guys were mostly all Italian. My affiliate relations guys and people, women and men, were mostly African American, because that's who headed these different departments.
Sure.
My legal department was Jewish. And I said to them, I got to tell you something, guys. The next person you hire in your group cannot be exactly the same as you. I want to see more diversity here, and I want to see more women. But he said, I learned from Reuben that it wasn't enough to be there, and it wasn't enough to talk about it. It was actually, I had to take action to make it happen.
And it is diversity in all of its forms.
Absolutely.
Right? I mean,
Yeah.
we haven't
Exactly.
been here speaking about women, but it's in all of its forms because, those of us who work in groups or large groups of all women, that's not ideal. Like, in other words, anything singular is not as effective or informed as something diverse. So I think that's actually one of the things that anybody that's in business, as a manager, as an executive, you want to champion, because the market data is also overwhelming. It speaks to the fact that diverse teams, whether that's gender, whether that's race, whatever it is, it doesn't matter, perform more effectively than those that are too singular.
I would add to that, too, to your point, Kay, the diversity, too. It's not just saying it, but it's also showing it and doing it. So everybody talks about work-life balance. I take my daughter to her dance class every week, so it's like I'm out of the office by 4:45 or 5 every day that time. That's not to say I don't log in after she goes to bed that night, but it's really showing that you care, and they talk about that they do those things, too. So it's not just lip sync of, we have work-life balance, but hearing them talk about it makes others feel like, you really can do those things.
So I think you're touching on the biggest problem that has yet to be solved, and that is women in the workforce who are having children, and at those critical years, that decade or decade and a half, where you need flexibility. And I think I was talking to Kay about this. The women in board thing is something that gets discussed a lot. And somebody pointed to a statistic that something in the 80% range of women with elite degrees leave the workforce at age 30 and don't come back until their mid-50s. And so that, to me, is really, really kind of startling. That means, and what the punchline was, those women then didn't have that experience that men had during that time with operating roles, and it's hard to just come back into that and then get on a board. So to me, that's a fundamental problem that we need to fix.
Absolutely.
And some of us have been lucky. I've always been lucky to have the flexibility and to make it work. And women are professionals. Given the opportunity, they will make it work. But that's the opportunity we need the most. That's where we need the men in the discussion and the women and the managers to really make that not just something that's talked about, but that actually happens.
That's practice.
I just wanted to point out for anyone who's interested, the Athena Doctrine came out over a year ago, and it's a book that did research on 64,000 people in something like 26 countries, men and women, asking what are the leadership attributes, and they had 125 attributes, I think, listed there. And they asked people to list what's feminine, what's masculine, or what's neither as an attribute. And it showed that the attributes that women bring to the table, collaboration, transparency, inclusion, etc., good communication skills, on and on, were actually the ones that people across the globe picked out as what they think are the leadership skills needed in the future. And you can tell by the change in the nature of work today. Collaboration is clearly, and transparency, and you have to be quick, and you have to be inclusive, and all these sorts of things are the attributes that people say leaders. And I was surprised, even in Korea and Japan, where you would not expect to see that, overwhelmingly, those were the attributes picked out. And if you're interested in it, the study is online and the book is available. John Gazema and his partner wrote the research on it. But what they concluded clearly at the end of the book, it was neither good nor bad to be having attributes that are attributed to men and those that are attributed to women, and that the combination of them, and we all have some parts of those within us, the combination of men, women, and people with these different attributes really make the best teams. Yeah. Very conclusive and a very thorough study if anyone's interested in it.
Fantastic. So I'd like to close out here, though, by asking you all one question each, and that is, if you had one piece of advice to give this audience about career success and journeys, what is it?
I think it's what I started with in terms of persistence. I didn't mention that I went to law school and I had a stack of letters like this, and they were all rejection letters. And then finally, I had taken securities law classes. I decided, so I didn't even look for a job. I took the bar, and then I worked for my dad's company, and I thought, okay, what do I want? I want to work at the SEC. I want to work at the SEC badly. And so I went after that, and I did. I got a job at the SEC, and I ended up transferring to Washington and moving on to policy kind of stuff. But really think about it, and when you want it, go for it. But don't just go for it and push your way through with your head down. Really prepare for it. Be thoughtful about it. And people are very impressed by that. Be knowledgeable. Talk to the right people, and get that balance right of being actively interested but not, overbearing. And that's when you tap your networks and you talk to people who maybe have worked there and you ask advice. But just really be thoughtful and, coherent or cohesive, I guess, in terms of your approach to doing that. And you will find success, I think.
Thank you, Laura. Vicki, how about you?
I would say have confidence in yourself. Don't let yourself doubt. We all have that inner voice of, oh, can I really do this? If people think you can do it, if they see something in you, then believe it and say, yeah, I can do this. But it's not only that, but it's also, like Lauren was saying, keep yourself open and have that network, though, to keep you set to reality, too. Have that trust of just that inner circle of trust that you can say, how are things really going? What do you see? Tell me. I want to know. Be honest. And talk to people. Don't, make time to talk to people. Building those relationships goes a long way.
Mm. What do you think, Lauren?
I don't know. There's, passion has always been a big theme for me because, my career is, like a series of switchbacks. It's a crazy sort of journey. And I think, loving what you do, like really deeply loving what you do so that when the bumps come, because they're coming, that they're little bumps. And you can keep on slugging with a tremendous amount of enthusiasm because you have a sense of destination. So I think passion, at least, for me personally, has been a huge driver because there are times when the bumps take your breath away. Like it takes your breath away that something has happened. I mean, and I've had a few. And unless you've got that kind of inner thing that's really driving you in some way deeply, not for the money, not for, the sort of extrinsic stuff. It's got to be the intrinsic stuff that keeps you driving.
I think these are all very good recommendations. I think that it's really important to find people that you admire, even if you've never met them, and study who they are and why do you admire them and what attributes do you think they have that would apply to you that you could really use. And you know what? Reach out to people. It's been mentioned before, but I do think that knowing the right people, if you're all networking here on the same level, you'll find other people on the same level and you can share things. But when you want to elevate yourself, you have to be up here. Like when I went out for sports, I went out to all the commissioners of sports. I didn't go to anybody else. I went right to the top to get what I wanted. You have to really find yourself and imagine yourself there. So when I sat down at the table with them, and I was 30 years old and just starting out in the business, I just said, I knew I belonged at that table, and they did too. And it's like how you treat yourself. And I've often said to people treat you the way you treat yourself. You have to realize that in many ways. So sort of envision yourself where you want to go and sitting at that table. It's really important to raise your own expectations of yourself, just to give you a visual image.
Just a funny thing on the mailroom thing was so ridiculous, right? When I told my mom, she was crestfallen. She was like, "You doing what?"
Driving a truck?
And then she took me shopping. And she said, "You're going to show up in that mailroom the best-dressed male person they've ever seen in their life." Because she said, if you want to get out of there in 6 months, you got to look like you don't belong there.
And she was right.
So I'm walking the corridors to IBM, and people are looking at me like, "What are you doing here?" And it worked.
Lauren, if you drove a truck to New York every day, you can do anything.
Anything. That's
That
right.
is kick-ass.
That is kick-ass. Yeah. Yet another case of clothes making the woman, right? Great. So do we have any questions out in the audience? Here we go. We have a couple.
Thank you. Hi, ladies. My name is Jessica Twentyman. I'm a journalist from the UK. One of the issues that I find fascinating, and I'd love to get your thoughts on this, is the whole area of quotas, particularly relating to women on boards, but just generally on diversity, setting quotas, setting targets. It's troublesome, and I know it troubles a lot of people. On the other hand, change is so slow. Can we really wait another generation for the representation that would be fair and right to be achieved? So I'd just like to get your thoughts on that.
Who wants to jump in on this one?
You know what? I think we're going to see movement on the boards. I've been working on it. Laura's been working on it. We've been working on it quite hard. We're stuck at 16%. Women stuck at 16% less, even so for minorities on boards for a decade. And I think the recent study shows it's 18-something% that has changed. And I think that the mood in the marketplace has changed. And I don't think it's overnight. I think filling board seats, but I think every board that I am on and every board that people I talk to are looking for highly qualified candidates, and they are looking for women. And you just did not see this even 5 years ago. So I think there's a change on a global basis. Quota systems won't work here. I've been working with the New York Stock Exchange and the NASDAQ to get reporting change so that companies should have to report what is their diversity policy and what are they doing to implement it. Because just to say, oh yeah, we're diverse, we like different people on the board, but don't do anything about it. It's just like I was saying, my lecture from Reuben Mark, it's not enough to say you're there. You've got to actually do it. And if they have to report it, it's shown in Australia, it almost doubled within 2 years the number of women on boards in Australia. So there are things that are in the market now, and people are sharing this information. So I think that we're at a period of time where you're going to see real change. Maybe we'll see 5 years from now if I'm right, but I think we will.
I think we have time for one more question. Yes.
My name is Jennifer Trevelyan. I work in IT at the University of Illinois. My question is, what factors do you take into account when you are faced with the decision of staying in a position long enough to effect change versus taking on a new position and expanding your experiences and getting a new career? Especially in higher ed, it does not move as fast as the corporate world. I've been in both. It's very painfully slow. So you kind of have to stay in a position for a very long time. And so what factors do you take into account when making those decisions?
I'll jump in on this one. I think you have to determine for yourself, is this where I need to be at the right place at the right time? And have mentors to help you with it too. But it might be that it's time to do a job change, or it might be that dig deeper. Don't do just the status quo of your job. Go and reach out and find something new if you have an idea. Don't just go and present the idea. Go do some more research for it and then say, here's some more things that I think. Collaborate with others for it and present it. What we're finding is our HR has, yes, you have to be in a position a certain amount of time, but if you're a hyper performer and you really can overachieve and go through those things, you really have to prove it. And it's not just one thing, but it's just that work ethic that you have. And so I think it's a couple different factors.
Yeah, I think you also have to manage it, literally manage it. Like, have a sense of whether it's a company or a role within a company. I've looked at resumes, I'm sure you all have, and you do look for progression, right? And so nobody can be a better judge than you whether or not, is the role still energizing to you, or are you getting stale in it, or, are you there the right amount of time to affect the impact and results you need to have? And then at that point, is it time to look and say, well, I either expand it or move on to something else? And sometimes I think, I've interviewed folks, and I'm always struck by the person will say to me, I got stuck in this job for a few years. A little voice goes off in my head that says, how'd that happen? Do you know what I mean? Because you really do have to, I think, be thoughtful about it and manage it. It's your life's time, It's your life's time, and so it's precious. So I think being intentional and thoughtful about it is actually really, really important.
All right. Well, thank you very much. I think, Lauren, you have a few closing comments.
Oh, yeah. Actually,
right?
excuse me.
We have something fun to share right before we head over.
Yeah. So, first of all, join me in a round of applause. I really want to thank my colleagues here. And it really is, special for me as being part of, CA and having, women on the team, with having Laura and Kay on the board as folks that, if you look at their careers and what they represent and the kind of perspective that they offer to our board, to our company, to women like me in the company, it's really outstanding and a privilege. As we were getting ready for this, all of us seem to be very focused on time management and great use of time. This may sound ridiculous to you, but we started exchanging our most beloved apps. And so our last parting gift to you is, here are our most beloved apps. And if you don't know any of them, this was actually one of those things where here we are planning this little session, and we were thinking about things that we could share with one another, and it turns out that apps are the currency of gifts in 2014. If you don't have a Vino and you like wine, you are missing a trick. It is fabulous because you can just shoot that wine bottle cover, and that not only tells you everything you want to know about the wine, but it gives you its rating from Robert Parker. Uber, I'm sure you all know. Social Alert. For moms and dads in the audience who have young children, a very important app that lets you have a kind of go-to in terms of their care. Seamless, I don't know about you guys, I use it a lot, but Takeout is a beautiful thing. TripAdvisor, fabulous, I'm sure you know that one. House for the decorators in the group, absolutely brilliant. Code Academy, little unexpected, a wonderful little app. This world, I'm sorry, here we are at CA World. Software is everything, right? You see it, we're living it. Code Academy is a little way to train your brain in terms of how to be a coder. Even if you don't know or want to be a coder or an engineer, gives you a little insight about what's going on in that world. And we live in a software-defined world. That's a fun one. Nike Training Club, in your hotel room, wherever you are, your health, your well-being, important. Amazing range of activity there to keep you healthy and happy. Waze, if you have troubles with navigation, you can't live without Waze. She talks to you. And last but not least, Wolfram Alpha. This is sort of Uber Wikipedia with real tech insight. Not very well known, but if you want to go a little periscope down into what's happening with technology, that's a really cool little app. So we got excited about this. Just a little ditty to kind of share with you guys. Again, thank you very much. It has been a delight and a pleasure to have this opportunity with you. Thank you.